In this video, I'm going to be breaking down my step-by-step process for how I personally go about pricing $10,000 plus videography projects. If you're new to the channel, hey guys, my name's Jono. I'm a former lawyer turned full-time filmmaker based in Sydney, Australia. At the start of 2022, I quit my high-paying corporate job as a lawyer to partner up with my best mate Jason to start up a videography business. And by mid-2023, we had grown our video hustle into a multi-six-figure business and learning how to package up our services and start pitching bigger projects like these $10,000 plus videography projects was a big reason why we managed to scale so quickly. So in today's video, I thought I'd take the opportunity to do more of a workshop style training similar to the monthly workshops that we run in our school community on various topics from filmmaking, self-development, and business, and break down my personal system for how I go about pricing these $10,000 plus videography projects. I'm actually going to be breaking down real quotes that we've sent in the past that clients have actually accepted and paid for. And I'm going to be using those quotes as examples to demonstrate some of the key concepts that I want to teach you guys in today's video. Because this is the information that I would have loved to see as a beginner when I was stuck doing $200 to $300 projects. I would have loved to see someone who was a few steps ahead of me just breaking down how they actually went about pricing these bigger projects. So hopefully you guys find today's training valuable. And with that, let's dive into my personal system for how I go about pricing $10,000 plus videography projects. I've got some slides here on my computer, which I'll be talking you guys through. So let's dive right in. Now, step one, before we even go into detail on the actual quote itself, one thing I wanted to talk about, which was probably the biggest thing that actually allowed me to make the jump into starting to increase our prices and get to that $10,000 plus videography project range, was actually changing my money mindset. So this slide right here shows 3 photos of me throughout my 20s. And throughout my 20s, I had very different mindsets about money and what I thought was a lot of money for me at the time. And being in my 30s now and looking back, I realized that my perceptions of money at the time really impacted my ability to pitch my services at a certain price point. For example, the photo of me on the left when I was 21 years old, this was a photo of me as a broke uni student backpacking through Europe. And this specific photo was me attending a Barcelona and Atletico Madrid game. If you guys have been watching the channel for a while now, you'll know that I'm a massive football fan, but being a broke uni student at the time, backpacking through Europe, trying to get by living at €10 a night hostels and eating out of supermarkets, 150 euros was a lot of money at the time. So as a 21-year-old kid, thinking that 150 euros was a lot of money, I couldn't imagine trying to ask someone to pay 150 euros even for my services. Fast forward to this photo in the middle. At 24 years old, I had just finished university and started life in the corporate world. And I remember I caught up for lunch with one of my best mates who also worked at the same company at the time. He was a friend from primary school, and he was telling me that he was about to get married. He was organizing his wedding, and he had just booked a wedding photographer for $3,000. And as someone who just finished uni at the time, who just started full-time work, I thought $3,000 was a lot of money. I couldn't imagine someone actually spending that much amount of cash just for a photographer to spend the day photographing their wedding. But from that meeting onwards, that started turning a little cog in my mind. Maybe potentially $3,000 could be a reachable target for me to start charging my services in the future. And then fast forward all the way to this photo on the right when I was 29 years old. This is a photo of my partner Gemma and I attending a property investing boot camp, which is held by our buyer's agent. We paid our buyer's agent $15,000 to help us secure our first investment property. And it's been the best $15,000 we've ever spent because it's helped kickstart and grow our investment property portfolio over the last 2 to 3 years. And all of a sudden, once we invested $15,000 into our own personal growth and development, my money mindset completely changed. All of a sudden, I didn't really think that $15,000 was a lot of money. So when it came to pricing and pitching my own services, I found that looking back now, my money mindset and how it changed over time really impacted my ability to pitch my services at a certain price point. Back when I was 21 years old and I thought that 150 euros was a lot of money, I could never have imagined being able to pitch my services at a $10,000. But now fast forward to 29 years old when I'm personally paying $15,000 for services for myself, all of a sudden asking someone else to invest $15,000 into me doesn't seem like such a big deal anymore. And that kind of goes back to a saying that one of my earlier mentors used to tell me, which is, how can you expect someone to invest in you if you're not willing to first invest in yourself? So a key takeaway from my own personal journey and how my money mindset changed over time is that my ability to charge for my services was directly tied to my internal limiting beliefs around money. If you think $10,000 is a lot of money, then it's going to be really hard to pitch your services at that price point. You're gonna have to do a little bit of work internally in terms of self-development and mindset in order to become the person that's going to be able to charge these high ticket projects. And even, for example, looking at myself and our videography business at the moment, I still have a lot of internal limiting beliefs around money. We've never sold a videography project over $30,000. So that's a limiting belief that I have. But as I develop my own money mindset over the next few years, $30,000 and $50,000 might not seem like such a large amount of money anymore, and I'll be able to confidently pitch my projects at that price point as well. So now let's actually move into the actual tactical side of how I go about pricing these projects. Okay, so step 2, articulating the value. Now, when I was a beginner videographer, I used to watch a lot of pricing and business related videos, and people used to always say, pitch based on your value, not based on the amount of hours that you put in. And I never really quite understood what this really meant. And as a result, when I was just starting the business back in 2022, I had a big limiting belief when it came to selling our videography services. I had this limiting belief that when clients invested X amount of dollars into our video services, that our videos needed to generate X amount of revenue back for their business. I thought of it like a direct trade. So if I couldn't show that my videos generated X amount of dollars for a client, then my service was not valuable. And speaking to a lot of beginner videographers who are new to pitching their services and the concept of videos to clients, I see that this is also a very big limiting belief that they have as well. And this limiting belief really impacted my ability to sell my services with confidence. But one concept that really started changing this internal limiting belief around the value of video was when I was introduced to the concept of the value equation, which comes from Alex Hormozi's purple book, $100 Million Offers. So the value equation breaks down the 4 things that ultimately drive perceived value in your customer's mind. So whenever I go about sending quotes and pricing our videography services, I always keep in mind these 4 pillars now in my pricing: the dream outcome, the perceived likelihood of achievement, the time delay, and the effort and sacrifice. And I actually want to talk to you guys about the exact turning point where I started overcoming this internal limiting belief around the value of video to actually starting to feel confident that, hey, our service is actually genuinely valuable for our clients and we should be pitching it accordingly. It was actually when we hired one of our first business mentors, and one of the first exercises he got us to do was to survey some of our past clients and ask them these 3 questions: why they hired us, what problem were they trying to solve, and what desired outcome were they hoping to achieve. So one day I blocked out a 2-hour period and I called 10 past clients and asked them these 3 questions. And I was actually genuinely really surprised with the responses that I got. This was one of the responses from a client that we had been working with for a couple of years. They were a developer that built residential projects around Sydney. And what really shocked me about the client's response is that how they think about the value of video was completely different from my own internal limiting belief around video. But what I learned from our clients' responses was that there was so much more value that they perceived in their mind. For example, if I just break down some of the key buzzword phrases in this response, it says, video is able to showcase a lot more. Video provides more emotion than just photo. There is warmth coming through. Video is more expensive, but it works better. They ran online ads and they found that there was a high click-through rate between photos and videos. Videos tended to get a 30 to 40% higher click-through rate. And lastly, videos are able to showcase their projects in the most beautiful way. They were looking for better production quality and a more premium look for their brand. And the biggest takeaway I got from this little exercise was that my internal limiting belief was completely shattered. When clients are investing in video, they're not always looking for a direct correlation between the amount of money they spend and the amount of money they get back. There's actually a bunch of other pain points that they're looking to address when they invest into video services. And so from that moment onwards, in all of the quotes that I sent out going forward, I always included a meeting summary section or a brief or a why. Why should they invest in this video package in the first place? And in that section, I try to address these 3 questions. Why should they hire us? What's the problem they're trying to solve with this video package? Or what's the desired outcome they're hoping to reach? So for example, these 2 meeting summaries actually come from 2 $10,000 plus quotes that I've sent in the past, which the client has actually accepted. The first one is a disability services provider, which I've actually broken down this project previously on our channel last year. But basically, after I had a call with the owner of the company, what I got was that they were in the process of a rebrand and they were launching a new website. They needed a library of content to encapsulate the brand and showcase the stories of their clients and their support workers through content. This second quote here was a $10,000 plus project that we did with a construction company. I had a meeting with the CEO and I asked him, what are you trying to get out of doing this video project? And he told me they're looking for an updated corporate video because basically the business has grown significantly over the last 10 years and they've really increased the amount of capabilities they have, and they want a video that encapsulates all those new capabilities. They wanted the video to be showcased on the homepage of their website, in their email signatures whenever their staff sent out emails to potential clients, and they also wanted the videos to accompany tenders that they were pitching for. So a personal story that I want to share with you guys to really hone in on this concept of thinking about the value of video a little bit differently is my story around football and my connection with the Nike brand. So all the way back in 2002, I would have been 8 years old at the time. I watched my first World Cup. It was the 2002 World Cup in Korea and Japan, which Brazil won. And Ronaldo, the phenomenon, was like the player of the tournament. Ever since that moment, I basically thought of the original Ronaldo as like a god. I would go to the backyard and try to imitate his step overs. I asked my dad to give me the same haircut that he had at the time, which was basically this like fugly looking like grass patch at the front of his head. Fair to say, I didn't really pull that look off, but yeah, I basically just wanted to be him. And in 2006, Nike released the Jogger TV or Jogger Bonito's ad series, which documented the Brazilian national team, guys like Ronaldo, Robinho, Rivaldo, and Ronaldinho, sort of in their day-to-day training and their games. And I just remember absolutely falling in love with that series. And from that moment onwards, all the soccer shoes that I've bought every single year when I've played soccer has been Nike boots. So this story right here, combined with the client survey exercise that I told you guys about previously, really leads me into sort of my key takeaway for this section, which I realized was that value does not always need to be quantified, but it needs to be articulated in a way that your clients will understand and resonate with. If your clients don't understand the value you're providing, and if that value is not important to them, if it doesn't resonate with them, they won't say yes to your pitches. So just remember again, value does not always need to be quantified, but your clients do need to understand the value they're getting, and that has to be important to them. By the way, guys, if you are enjoying the training so far and you're a beginner looking to monetize your videography passion and land your first paying client, go check out our 6-figure filmmaker starter kit. It contains the roadmap, tools, and all the templates like the email quotes that I've talked about in this video and the proposal templates that we personally use in our videography business to go from complete beginners back in 2019 to growing a multi-6-figure videography business. So go check that out, link below. Okay, now moving on to step 3, the process. Now, oftentimes, if you are able to get into a conversation with a client and they're interested in your services, oftentimes they like your work, right? But the next question that they'll have in their mind is, but can you actually produce the same result for me? And when I think about it in terms of the value equation by Alex Hormozi, that basically goes to the perceived likelihood of achievement. Yes, I like your work, I like your portfolio, all that stuff, but how likely is it that you're gonna be able to achieve the same outcome for me? So in my quoting process, the more that I can increase the perceived likelihood of achievement in my client's mind, the more valuable my solution will seem and the more likely they will say yes. So just to give you guys some example of what this actually looks like in my actual quoting process, again, example 1 here was the same quote that I shared previously for the disability services provider. They basically wanted to capture 4 really impactful client stories. And so my process for actually going about doing this was we're going to do a pre-shoot strategy and planning session where we hop on a call with a client, actually break down what are the 4 stories we're going to tell, and then reverse engineer some interview questions to draw out the story a little bit better. We're gonna have 2 full-day shoots. We actually ended up having 4 half-day shoots instead to capture each one of the 4 stories. Earlier in our journey, I never added this last line where it says additional on-site shoots will be charged at X amount of dollars. And we ended up getting a little bit screwed by this because clients would ask us to reshoot and would basically just do it for free because we had no grounds for basically charging them any more money. So nowadays, I always like to add this extra line in just in case clients ask us to go back and reshoot something. The second example here was the project that we quoted for the construction company. Again, as you guys can see, we included a pre-shoot strategy and planning session. We also included a location scouting element. Sometimes this is really important when we're doing sort of more high production campaigns where we want to just have a look at the space before we're shooting, just to make sure that on the shoot day itself, everything runs really smoothly. We organized 1 half day in their office space to basically capture some interviews with sort of the members of their key management team and also some other staff members, and also 3 on-site shoots. I think we actually added on 2 more, so it was actually in total 5 on-site shoots to capture various projects that they had going on around Sydney. So as you guys can see from the scope of work section, every single dot point has a part to play in the overall process for how we're actually going to come up with a final solution for the client. I'm not just pulling shoot days out of my ass to charge the client more money. Each shoot day is based on what is the final story or the deliverable that we want to produce for the client. And by setting out a clear process in our scope of work for how we're actually going to produce the final result for the client, it really increases the perceived likelihood of achievement. It's basically like cooking. Jason and I used to run a cooking channel, so we're really into recipes and stuff like that. With cooking, you're way more likely to make a delicious meal if you have a set recipe and ingredient list to follow. And in your client's mind, you're way more likely to produce the video that they're looking for if there is a clear process that you guys are both following. Okay, so step number 4, the next question I like to think about when I go about pitching these $10,000 plus projects is, what does the client actually get for their money? Because if a client is going to be investing $10,000 plus into your services, they want to know, what is the final product? What do I actually get for my money? And a really good analogy I want to share with you guys are developers, because in our videography business, we work with quite a lot of developers. And with developers, what they basically do is they acquire an empty block of land. They build, let's say, a tower of residential apartments, and then they sell those apartments to buyers. But oftentimes when they're trying to sell these apartments have not even been built yet. Oftentimes it's just an empty block of land. So how can they actually go about showcasing what the finished apartment or product the customer is actually getting? Well, number 1 is they produce what we call CGI renders, which are actually like sort of 3D animations to give potential buyers an idea of what the finished apartment will look like. And a bigger step they actually do is they actually construct display apartments. So this screenshot here at the bottom was actually us filming one of our clients talking through one of the display apartments. So what they do sometimes is they'll actually spend a couple $100,000 just to construct a display apartment that they can bring potential buyers into, where they can actually get a really good look and feel of what their future dream home will look like. And if I go back to the value equation, what that does again is it increases the perceived likelihood of achievement. So personally, when I go about pricing my service, I think it's a really important step to give your clients the best idea of what they actually get when they invest this amount of money into your services. And so this actually brings me to the deliverable section of our quotes. So the deliverable section basically sets out what the client actually gets in terms of the quantity of photos and images they get from the project. And what I always do is include an example link for each deliverable so the client actually gets a good idea of what the final product will look like. This example link right here is basically my version of the display apartment that our developer clients do. But it costs me way less money to send this link. I just have to go into my Vimeo, copy the link and send it to them. One thing that I also really like to do when it comes to pricing that I've done in example 1 is this concept which I call deliverable stacking. So oftentimes a client will come to us, they want a certain amount of deliverables for the project, but then based on my experience and what I think they might also find valuable, I also pitch some additional deliverables that I think they'll find useful. And oftentimes clients actually end up going with those optional extras as well. So think of when you go to McDonald's and you order a burger and the cashier asks you, would you like fries with that? Me offering optional deliverables is basically the McDonald's version of basically upselling people on fries. Now, for a lot of you guys watching this video, you might think, okay, what if I'm pitching a project, but I don't actually have any example deliverables for my own portfolio that I can send to the client? In that case, sometimes, for example, for us, if we're entering a new industry or a new type of client that we haven't worked with previously, and we don't have very specific examples to show them, what we'll do is we'll send them a link to a reference video that we may have found, for example, through YouTube or a competitor's brand. The whole idea of sending the example link, again, is to increase the customer's perceived likelihood of achievement. If you can give your clients a really good idea of what the final video or product that they're going to get, the more valuable your solution is going to seem. Okay, so now moving on to step 5. If you have articulated the value clearly to your client, the client understands it and resonates with that value, they understand the process that you're going to go through to produce the solution, and they're clear in terms of what they're actually going to get in terms of deliverables from the money they're investing in you, the next thing they're going to want to know is what are the next steps. And when I think about the value equation, this next step section basically addresses the time delay and the effort and sacrifice from the client's end. So this is actually the next steps, our process template that I send at the end of all of our email quotes. It's basically a 7-step process, which I'll basically walk you guys through right now. So step number 1, if the client is happy with a quote and they want to go ahead, I basically ask them to confirm via email to proceed. And I also ask them to include what are the optional extras that they want to include as part of the project. Basically asking them to email me back what sort of fries they want on top of their burger. Step number 2, once they've approved the quote, we'll basically send out a 50% deposit invoice along with a service agreement outlining the scope of work in the email quote. Once the client has paid the initial invoice and signed the agreement, we commence the project. Typically, in terms of our payment terms, the remaining balance is payable upon completion of the project. So once the deposit has been paid, the agreement's been signed, we organize a pre-shoot planning session with the client to plan out the videos and prepare a pre-production document that they approve before the shoot date. Once that's approved, we organize the shoot dates for filming. It takes us typically around 2 weeks to prepare the drafts for the client's review. They come back to us with any feedbacks and we address those feedbacks in a week's time. And finally, we sit down for a debrief call and develop a distribution plan for the content that we've produced for them. This debrief call is really a coaching session where we talk the client through the best ways of maximizing the content that we've produced for them. Because it's all well and good having these really nice photos and videos, but it's not actually valuable to the client if no one actually sees it. So that's where the distribution plan really comes into play. That is my 5-step process for how I go about quoting and pitching $10,000 plus videography projects. Now, in terms of a bit of a rule of thumb, when it comes to my own personal approach, with these $10,000 plus videography projects, I typically just send them out through an email quote. So basically, these 2 example quotes that I've broken down, I just sent them via email, the client accepted via email, and then we just commenced the project from there. Typically, I'll start putting our pitches and proposals into a nice looking PDF if the project is, let's say, $20,000 or above. But again, that's just my personal system because I personally have too many quotes to send out. I don't have the time to prepare all these beautiful looking PDFs for every single quote that I send. So I just save it for some of the bigger projects that we do. I hope you guys found today's training valuable and hopefully you guys can use the tips from this video and land your first $10,000 plus videography project, or even just start learning how to increase your prices going forward. Again, if you guys do want access to some of the email quotes and proposal templates that we personally send in our videography business, go check out the 6-Figure Filmmaker Starter Kit. Appreciate you guys for staying to the very end of a much longer video. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys enjoy more of these workshop style videos, and we'll do more of them going forward in the future. If you're a beginner videographer looking to elevate your journey and your production quality, don't forget to also check out some of our free resources like our creator kit, which sets out our 7-step pre-production system. If you guys are interested in connecting with a community of like-minded videographers just like yourself and get access to more monthly workshop trainings just like this, don't forget to also check out our school community, the Creative Club. Would love to see you guys in there. And that's it for today's video, guys. Appreciate you for sticking to the very end of this video. You guys are the real OGs. Go check out this video right here, which is a job shadow vlog that we did filming a Japanese omakase restaurant. I'll see you in the next one. Stay focused.